Welcome to the Real Chili Podcast.
And the Golden Eagles of Marquette University in Milwaukee are bound for the Final Four for only the third time ever.
5 seconds left. Marquette down by one, trying to avoid the upset. Blue the drive, the left hand. It's good. 1 second to play. Vander Blue has put Marquette in front by one.
And I want to win every day as basketball players, as students, and I want to win every day, most importantly, as people.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Real Chili Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lavender. I'm joined by Brian Henry and Pete Mohan. And fellas, for the second time in 7 days, Marquette has toppled the number 12 ranked team in the country. It doesn't get much sweeter than that, but it does get sweeter when one of those teams is the Wisconsin Badgers, and that was one hell of a fun basketball game versus Wisconsin.
It is a blessed and joyous Sunday to record this podcast. It may be the Lord's Day, but the weekend belongs to the Marquette University Golden Eagles. Fantastic to beat Wisconsin yesterday, and just all faith and hope restored on a season that 8 days ago, God, did I doubt it, but oh, was I wrong. This is just fantastic.
Well, Wisconsin had a chance, and then Golden Eagles swooped in, stole that victory.
That was a shockingly good sound effect you did.
Did you
right
like that?
That was.
Oh, that's
You're good with birds. You're good with turkeys and
true.
Apparently golden eagles. Yeah.
I've been working on my Golden Eagle, but yes, it was a stunningly good performance, and it was an edge of your seat nail biter the whole way. There really weren't many large leads on either side. It pretty much was in single digits the whole game, and every shot counted. It was like watching a playoff football game. Every possession had huge implications.
Shouts to the crowd. I thought they were great. Shouts to the student section. I thought they made things difficult, especially late in the second half, forced Wisconsin to miss a couple late free throws. Shouts to Marcus for showing up. Joey Hauser for showing how big his nuts are in a huge game. Even when bad Brad Davidson tried to take a piece out of him. Suck it, Brad. Glad couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. And then his older brother, 13 points and 14 friggin' boards to go with it. A great day for the biggest names on the roster. A great day for Marquette basketball.
So this game, and you mentioned a little bit of it there, but this game had everything you could want in an entertaining basketball game. And I'm so happy this was Marquette's national game, one of Marquette's national games this year. I got texts from so many family and friends at the end of that game who were impressed by the way we looked. That's great for Marquette, period. But this game, you mentioned the Brad Davison nut punch, lead changes throughout the game. I think the biggest lead was 6, maybe 7. So it didn't get bigger than that. You're right. Every single shot counted. There were big plays made by Ethan Happ, made by Wisconsin, made by Ed Morrow, made by Joey Hauser. It had everything you wanted. I was on the edge of my seat, Pete. I agree with that. And, we'll get into in a little bit talking about what this means for Marquette's season. But, Brian, I want to throw it to you. And your top-line takeaway from this game, we're learning more about this Marquette team. And we've said on the podcast that this team seems to be putting more of the pieces together. And I don't know if you saw Wojo's post-game presser, but I thought there was an interesting quote in there. And the quote was, "We're a paint team." And I think that's an interesting flip from previous Marquette teams over the last several years, where this is more of a team that's in the traditional style, playing through the paint. And I think that's an interesting flip for this Marquette team. And they seem to be putting it together more and more.
I'll give you my biggest takeaways. The defense resembled that got us excited at the start of the season, especially from Kansas State to this one. They guarded exceptionally well. Now, that said, yes, Happ had a huge game. I also think Happ, everybody can, jokes aside, guy's one of the best players in America. He's an unbelievable post player. There aren't many people that are going to slow him down this year. He's going to have an excellent time. My last point in this group, to single it to an individual, I know I shouted out some of the other guys, that was the first game that we got to see Morrow step up and make a massive impact. He made some huge defensive stops late, and that offensive rebound in traffic, if you weren't off your couch and screaming and flexing like Devontae Gardner used to do, there's something clinically wrong with you. That was unbelievable. Props to Morrow for coming up huge in that moment.
It was an unbelievable play, and it's definitely one of those plays that you're going to remember for a long time and tell people about. To your point about Ethan Happ, though, I don't think the game plan was to stop Ethan Happ and win that way. If you take Wojo at his word after the game plan they laid out was, let's do what we can against Happ, and you saw that in the first half. They were doubling. One of the Hausers was rotating over. Someone else would rotate over to put a double on Happ. And Happ, being the All-America candidate that he is, would frequently pass out of it, and they got a number of wide-open bunnies on that. Now, to their credit, the coaching staff in the second half, maybe late in the first, they went away from that and said, all right, Wisconsin, Demetric Trice, some of their other shooters, you guys are going to have to be the ones that beat us. Wisconsin wasn't able to do that. So you couple that with just solid all-around defense, and that was kind of the recipe for Marquette. Marcus Howard had it going a little bit, although, the weird free throw situation at the end. But it was kind of the game that I was waiting for, Pete Mohan. I remember you saying that we're waiting for it all to come together. This wasn't how I was expecting it was going to come together, but everybody contributed, right? Everybody contributed. It seemed like almost everybody had a moment, and that's something we haven't seen before.
Yeah, I think that it was a well-balanced win. There's a lot of people that shared responsibility. Before we move on from talking about Morrow and Theo John, I just think that we have to continue to hope for their incremental growth. If these guys can make one more key play a game, each game this year, by the end of the year, they're going to be major contributors. And, obviously, Happ scored 16 of 21 in the paint. That's not a dominant interior defensive performance. There's no been that, but they keep making key plays at key times.
Well, and how many of those points from Happ were when Matt Helt was guarding him, right? And that's not to write off Matt Helt, but that's not necessarily on Morrow or Theo John.
Oh no, God love him, but please, you can write off Matt Helt guarding him. I mean, God love Matt Helt, but that was like watching him try to guard Isaac Haas a year ago. I mean, Happ has just. As the podcast resident big man that doesn't want to shoot outside of 12 feet himself, I respect his game, and it's very impressive for a guy that cannot stretch the floor at all, is still able to get shots up because the defense knows where he wants to get, and he's still able to do it. It's a good player. That guy's going to hurt a lot of teams this year. There's no shame in him beating you up a little bit. And to your point, we're all very excited right now. I mean, this was a 50-50 game that went to overtime. A couple plays go a different way. Holy crap. Make a friggin' free throw down the stretch. My God, how many times did they try to give it away?
And Morrow stopped the bleeding with his two free throws that he made.
Not to be dramatic, but this could have been suicide theater for 45 minutes if that fell apart down the stretch. We feel great, but there was an opportunity this could have gone the other way. They were right there. Props to Marquette for winning a close game, but let's not go over the board and say it all came to – they very easily could have lost, and we'd be acting like the sky was falling down, especially if they blew a late lead. We would. It's reality. It's true.
Well, we did predict that if Marquette had lost, that you would be in a sky is falling down scenario.
Oh, my God. I mean, I'd be shouting from the rooftops. There's no denying that at all. I'd be calling for jobs. I'd ask to –
You'd be driving another car into the Al.
Oh, shoot. You know what? That'd be the best. That's a demonstration of our interior defense, of the way we defended that car.
Getting back to the game at hand and thinking a little bit more about Ed Morrow. I think if you look at the improvement that he's shown, neighbor Pete made the point on the last pod, how that play or that series against Louisville, those series of plays that Morrow seemed to make, really kind of seemed to snap him into it. And, he took that flop charge a couple of games ago. Maybe that was against UTEP. I can't remember. But he's on a curve here, and it's headed sharply upwards. And if the next data point is the Wisconsin game, it continues to head upwards. Making plays in big moments like he did, not everybody can do that. He stepped up at some of the most crucial moments. That's something special. So, I was thoroughly impressed with Ed, and if he can continue or even maintain that, yes, we want him to get better. But those sort of intangibles, Marquette's lacked that. Theo John gets in foul trouble, can't be on the court that much. If you have a guy like Ed Morrow who can stay on the court and make plays, no, he's not a world beater, but we need guys like that who can make those momentum plays down towards the end of games to secure wins.
It's nice to at least just have some deterrent at the rim for once.
Yes.
Coming
that block
on and Morrow, it's at the very least, it's something to put on film,
Yep.
Guys are going to be a little more cautious when they go to the rack, when they see these kind of life-ending blocks that Ed Morrow has put on people. Yeah. Just to change directions a little bit, just some other key things that I want to take away from this game. First of all, we talked about the inability to defend interior, but our perimeter defense was exceptional. We held them to 21% on threes. And most key, one thing that we mentioned in the last pod in the preview, Dimitri Trice, can we shut him down? Coming in, shooting 60% from three. He was 1 for 6. And, yeah, it's a game of inches. That's really where we made our biggest margin. Both teams didn't do well from the free throw line, and they shot 73 from 2. So just the ability to get those few extra misses from the three-point line for them, that pretty much made all the difference. And we won the turnover battle. So just some interesting defensive performances. And you're right, the game plan obviously wasn't to throw everything at Hap. It was to run people off the line.
Right. I think if you look at the box score, you see people like Joey Hauser, Brian. You see people like Sakara Nim, who had 7 points. Joey had 15. These guys who up until this point have been, more of the role contributors and contributed in spots. But those sorts of contributions in this game are what put us over the top. And Joey Hauser, wow. I haven't got a chance to go back and look at the film. I think he was yelling at Marcus after Marcus took that shot at the end of regulation because Joey was wide open on the three-point line. We're not going to – no one near him. Now, we're not going to get into whether Marcus should or should not have passed because – I think that's a fruitless discussion.
Oh, I'd like to get into it and offer a thought.
And if Joey had that shot and taken it and made it, he would have had to do the Sam Cassell.
But I love the fact that Joey's a freshman and he's assuming that's what he said, that he has the confidence to go in and say something like that. I mean, he hit some big shots. I think he had an early basket in overtime with the reverse layup from underneath the basket. Maybe that was late in regulation. But Joey Hauser stepping up in big moments. And that's what I like about what we learned from this game is that some of these guys, aside from Marcus, stepping up in big moments when their team needed them, that's what we wanted to see, and we saw some of it.
It's pretty clear that he has separated himself from any level of competition for that position. Played 33 of a possible 45 minutes.
Yeah,
that's confidence from your head coach that he not only deserves to
started.
Right. Not only that he deserves to be out there, he needs to be out there for us to be successful. His brother played over 40 minutes. We all know Marcus played over 40. To pivot it back to the end of game scenario, I thought that last sequence was great. We got a great look by our best player, a shot that he's made very regularly. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes, Joey had an opportunity. If Marcus spun and wheeled the ball back around, he got a chance for him to shoot it. That's the guy I'll have take the shot. They didn't sell out to get the ball out of his hand, so he tried to make him pay. He almost threw that thing in. I mean, I had
a chance for a turnover too if it's in one guy's hands.
Exactly. I had no problem with the end of game scenario there. And people, if we get it, presumably it'll happen again later this season. Marcus is such a good scorer from anywhere on the arc to inside. He's going to draw that kind of attention. It'll come up. There'll be a game where he ends up kicking it, but I got no problem with him trying to create something and getting a shot like that. I thought that was great.
One other interesting stat, 0 turnovers for Chartouni in 17 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He didn't make a shot, but
didn't make a
he
shot.
Did turn the ball over.
But he didn't hurt us. He didn't commit a foul.
3 assists.
3 assists, 4 rebounds. Pretty strong rebounding performance from the team overall.
Yeah, shout out to Sam for 14 rebounds. Maybe we can coin the term a Hauser's dozen. If 13 is a Baker's dozen, 14 might be a Hauser's dozen.
I like that.
We
really like that.
Coming into the year, there was a lot of talk about, the roster and the length and the athleticism. correct me if I'm wrong, but it felt like throughout this game, whether it was Morrow, Theo, Brendan Bailey, who I think interestingly got 10 minutes and I think did some nice things, played some good defense in spots. It feels like we're starting to see this athleticism and this length maybe spread its wings a little bit and see what it could be as we go throughout the season. Now, obviously, it didn't show itself against Indiana or maybe for a half against Kansas, but I found it interesting, and I liked a lot of what I saw from Brendan Bailey. He's still getting his sea legs underneath him, but that kid's got some promise, and the fact that, similar to your point, Brian, about Joey Hauser being out there for 33, Bailey getting 10 minutes in this game is not an insignificant thing because I think they were important minutes in certain spots of the game.
100% they were. And I'll throw one other number at you that it really, when you look at the box score, what I think is the most stunning part about it, Wisconsin shot 50% from the floor as a team. Marquette shot 35-4. That usually means loss.
Yeah.
I'd argue that usually means loss 9 times out of 10. That's very rare, but the biggest thing to it, and it goes to show, to Mike, your point about length on defense and Bailey being a part of that, Chartouni, Marquette got 10 more shot attempts than Wisconsin did in that game, and there's your difference. That's how you get it to overtime. That's how you find a way to pull it out at the end.
And 13 more free throws as well.
Exactly right. They gave themselves a chance on a game. They didn't shoot it that well. I mean, that was I think we'd argue a slightly below average offensive game for what we expect from this team. Although I do have a big picture thought for you guys at a later part of the pod. That to win a game like that, they got down. That was a Big Ten style basketball game in a good way.
Yep.
I don't say that. I'm not part of the defaming. Oh, it's on what it's. Yeah, they can get a little rough sometimes, but they're bigger, stronger. I was fine with it. You got to be able to win that way. You got to go into the tournament and win that way.
Can we just come out and say this team is winning because of its defense?
I think so. Yeah, I'm comfortable saying that now. I think you look at the month we've had, the past month. And it's difficult to say that that's not the case because I think what we did against Kansas State, how we competed with Louisville. Louisville is not a roster that you can compete with if you're not defending because they're too big, they're too quick, they're too athletic. I don't see how you could say any differently.
To hold Kansas State even to 71, I think that's a great performance.
Yeah. Thinking about, kind of adding to this theme of this wasn't our best game, but we still found a way to win. When was the last time we shot 6 from 18 from 3 and won a game? 33% from the 3-point line. That's a pretty poor.
It's not terrible.
It's not terrible, but 6 threes in a game and we won against the 12th ranked team in the country. That tells you in and of itself that something else is going on with this team, and it's a good thing.
Also, it's a Wisconsin defense. The fact that Marquette only attempted 18 threes is a credit to Wisconsin's defense because they ran us off the line extremely well.
Yeah,
that's another strong defensive team. I mean, just to go back to the box score, Mike, and it is jarring when you look at it. Marcus Howard attempted 29 shots in this game.
Yeah.
7 for 29 from the floor. And on the other side, Happ, 16 for 21.
Yeah.
16 for 21. Come get some, Matt Help. Just, wow. I mean, basically it was 2 guys on that, but trading shots back and forth. I mean, the wide part of the offenses for both teams ran through 2 players.
Yeah.
Just to come back to the defense thing, though, I think that the biggest key to defense, you have to end the possession. And we only allowed 3 offensive boards the entire game.
Great point.
Which usually in this game, that's where we get killed. It's their guys totally owning us on the boards. And for us to end 90% of possessions with the defensive rebound, that's going to limit their opportunities. That's going to limit those long kick-out threes, open opportunities on the perimeter, the scramble plays, and those just were really tough to come by for Wisconsin.
I mean, that's Sam Hauser, that's Ed Morrow, that's Chartouni. That's those guys really flexing their muscle. Theo had a couple, but Theo didn't get much run towards the end of the game. So we mentioned that there were a lot of reasons to keep your eyeballs stuck to this game. And I think the announcers mentioned several times throughout the game that there was a lot of chatter going on between the 2 teams. The Brad Davison hook, the Brad Davison nut punch, where does this go down in lore and history of this rivalry? Because this thing There was a tweet from the Testicular Cancer Society already today about Brad Davison. This thing has gotten a lot of traction. It's hilarious. I'm glad it happened to Brad Davison. I have no love lost for that kid.
He's wearing the crown for bitch ass dude. That's all that you need to say.
You saw the look on his face, because I watched the replay of that play. You saw the look on his face immediately that he knew he had got called for what he was doing. Brian, what do you think?
I am just trying to wrap my head around a couple things. One, it is a tight ball game in the waning moments. Why in Christ's name, when someone is trying to set a screen on you, would you think this is a good time to squeak the nut punch in? Just from a standpoint, if I was Brad Davidson's teammate, I would have made him walk back to Madison. He lost them the game in that moment. That is so unbelievably stupid to attempt to do that. Now, let's focus on just the act itself. And to quote Pete Mohan, what a bitch. F that guy. You want to come and punch him in the nuts? Be softer. Go take another friggin' charge.
Brother Rashid was smiling down, though, because the ball did not lie.
The ball did not lie.
It did not lie.
Brad Davison missed all 3 of his shots, which were threes, and all 3 of his free throws.
I was going to say that because, Brian, you said he lost the play for his team. He lost the game for his team on that play. I would say it's the fact that he played 33 minutes, didn't score a single point, had 4 fouls and had a turnover. I think that is a nice summary of Brad Davison in this game. Completely worthless.
He played like trash.
Yeah.
Absolute trash. Way to go, dude. Your team needed you. You came up like a complete 0 in a big game. And on top of your trash performance, you decided to punch a guy in the nuts in crunch time. Awesome. Thanks for playing. Can't wait to see you next year. Best of luck.
I have some advice for Mr. and Mrs. Davison. I think that they should make their list, check it twice, and make sure that there's some depends on there for little Braddy, because when the game's on the line, he shits his pants.
All right. So we're going to move on. This has been great.
No. I don't
Merry
think we
Christmas.
Need to move on. We might have one more. No, I'm kidding.
No. Let's move on. This is a 20-year-old. So moving on, I kind of want to get into a bit of a conversation to close us out. Marquette has a few more games left in the non-conference, most notably against Buffalo in Milwaukee on December 21st. Buffalo, I believe they're 17th in the country right now. The new AP poll comes out tomorrow. We're recording this on a Sunday night, Sunday, December 9th.
A lot of Bulls fans out there.
A lot of Bulls fans, but I want to kind of – we were in a mode early in the season where we had a bad loss to Indiana. We had a promising half against Kansas and then got the doors blown off in the second half. Since then, we've beaten Wisconsin, we've beaten Kansas State, and we've beaten Louisville. And we have an opportunity to secure another top 25 win within the next couple of weeks here. What is your opinion of this Marquette team right now? A pretty good chunk of the way through the non-conference. How have your expectations grown, diminished, or stayed about the same as they were from the beginning of the season? Where do you think Marquette stands right now?
I think that they're pretty much right at where we discussed them being this time of year. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they had one more loss at this point. Things definitely got rocky, but I think going into the season, we were saying if this team comes out of the non-conference with 2 losses, that's a great non-conference season. If they come out with 3, that's still good. There's going to be some good wins on there. Even if we lose to Buffalo, I would say that we're on a more successful bent for the non-conference season. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that there's any reason to be angry about where this team is at. The defense is improved. There's a lot of pieces, and we're seeing them get integrated, and it's just a slow process. So I really think that they're pretty much right on schedule for what they should be at this point. Brian's going to be angry and have a very –
Well, I got a follow-up question for Brian. So, Brian, answer that one, then I got a question for you.
Why would you think I would be angry? Absolutely not, Pete. You made a very rational –
You're not a fan of our halftime game planning.
Yeah.
Is anybody? I mean,
when we win.
Yeah, is anybody out there a fan of our second half adjustments over the last 5 years? Probably not. This is my hot take. I think we've played our way back. I think we've played our way back to even, and that's not to belittle where they're at, but I think the gravity of what happened in Bloomington and the disappointment to kind of unravel in the second half against Kansas, I think everybody was feeling pretty down, some lower than others, me included. That Louisville game was a huge gut check win. Kansas State opened eyes. I think Wisconsin told us, okay, it's going to be okay. Buffalo is a huge basketball game. It's going to be very hard. Why? It's over break. That building's going to be pretty much lifeless. Buffalo is going to come in with their hair on fire. Can't wait to play another team like Marquette, which they can beat if they play well. Not out of the question at all. And they're going to have to summon the energy purely from within themselves to beat that team. That's going to be one of – I think at this point, considering what's happened, I think it's going to be the hardest one to get up for because that's a team that could run you off the floor if you don't play well with how fast they get up and down and how fast they shoot it. So that'll be a huge one.
Yeah, so, Brian, my follow-up question to you, there is a significant component of the fan base, which you and I and Mohan and others may have been members of at some point, where those who reasonably criticize Wojciechowski and some of the decisions that have been made, adjustments, et cetera, et cetera. I'm wondering from your standpoint, do you still have all those same feelings? Obviously, what we've seen over the past month doesn't erase anything that's happened in the past. That's not the case at all. But have you seen things over the past month that tell you that maybe we're on the way to getting better? Or does everything that you've still harbored up until this point still exist? I think it's an important discussion because I think it's a discussion happening in the Marquette fan base. And I want to make sure we're covering it here. So I'm curious as to what you guys think about this success that we're having. How much is attributable to Wojo?
Absolutely, 100%. I'm swinging back in the right direction. I'll say this again, and I know I can go back and find the audio. I don't think Wojo is a objectively bad coach. I think he has struggled with the rosters that he's had to play the way he wants. And I think we're finally seeing a glimpse in his 5th season of a roster that he wants to play with. And I think that group is still figuring it out because there's so many newcomers. I think the ceiling is very high for this group. I think the challenge is on him to get him to that ceiling. If this is talent-wise, this is a top 3 team in the Big East. They should hopefully be, 7 seed or better in the NCAA tournament. We shouldn't be sweating it out on Selection Sunday. I guess that would be my expectation at the end of the year. I don't think they're perfect. They're going to lose some games that are going to make us, scratch our heads and go, what the hell? But, to your original question, yeah, they're playing better defense. I wish Marcus wasn't so ball dominant.
Yes.
But I get it. He's the best you got. He's an elite shooter. Your team's still figuring it out, so he's going to take more. So I'm not running around going, oh, God, this is going to come tumbling down any second. No, they're absolutely moving in the right direction.
It does feel like a solid foundation that's been built, and I think that is directly attributable to the coaching staff. And I think the question we had about defense coming into the year, it does look like these guys are playing like they want to play defense and playing with some effort and some physicality. Mohan, do you see it the same way, at least in terms of the coaching staff and what they've been able to do? Do you feel confident that this is not a mirage?
I think that it's tough to understand what the balance is of what is responsible for success.
Yes.
I think that from this standpoint, for where we are in Wojo's history, I feel like he's been more successful as a recruiter than as an in-game coach. But you can't win games without good players either. So I want to give a nod to his recruiting at the very least. And, his win percentages have slowly ticked up. I sound like a broken record, but I think that we're right on track. I think the Big East Conference is going to be really interesting to see what other teams emerge as our biggest competitors. I think that Villanova is obviously still a really good team, nowhere near what they were last year or the couple of years before that, but still will be a challenge, for that top spot. First of all, there's no team in the country right now who's saying, oh, I want to play Marquette in the tournament if we face them. Nobody wants to see Marcus Howard during the NCAA tournament. That's a fact.
Except for South Carolina, maybe.
Maybe South Carolina. But this is a team that's deep, and we're built to continue to improve. Of all of the teams that are competitive in the country right now, Marquette potentially stands to improve the most out of all these other teams in the field just because of how much they have going and how much they still have to feel out.
I couldn't agree more. And folks, we're going to wrap it up there for this episode of the Real Chili Podcast. You'll probably be hearing this on a Monday or Tuesday, which means there's a week, maybe a little bit more, until Marquette's next game, which is going to be against North Dakota in Milwaukee at the Fiserv Forum. Ken Pom projects that as an 83-62 win. So really a bit of a breather ahead of the Buffalo game.
A bit of a breather. For the record, don't ever get it twisted. They're the Fighting Sioux, whatever the heck they're calling themselves now. Ignore it. It's the North Dakota Fighting Sioux. Otherwise, yeah. Can't wait. Buffalo game on December 21st is going to be huge.
So just 3 games left in this non-conference, and then on New Year's Day, January 1st, we travel to St. John's, where Shamori Pons is going to put up 75 points against the Marquette team.
Minimum.
All right, folks. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Real Chili Podcast. Stay tuned to this feed. We'll have some entertaining and interesting pods for you over the holiday break that you can sink your teeth into, even though Marquette won't be very active. Signing off for Brian Henry, signing off for Pete Mohan, and for everyone else here at the Real Chili Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lavender. We'll talk to you next time.
Shout out to our boy Griffin.
Oh, what's up, Griffin?
Sad and bougie. My man.
The homie Griffin. What's good?